Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the AJ Analysis channel and another live stream. First thing we need to check today is this actually working? If you guys are in a Discord server or paying attention to YouTube, I've spent the last 5 minutes trying to go live and it wasn't working. I've just got a notification, so I think we are good and I think we are ready to go. Sun, I can see you in the chat. No, can I see Sun? I could see Sun in the chat. Anyway, if any of you are in the Discord server, could you please share the link to this stream in the Discord? Because basically YouTube has tried to live stream in like 8 different places, which of course doesn't work. So if one of you could please help with that, that would be greatly appreciated. If you could just share a link in the Discord, that would be amazing. Anyway, technical difficulties out of the way. Manchester United have another big game this weekend, and this weekend it's against Nottingham Forest. A different type of match to what we've faced in the last 3. Of course, we've played a couple of home games recently and also one away at Anfield. This weekend is different for United. It's away against Nottingham Forest, and for me it feels like a different type of test. Forest, of course, have had an absolutely horrible start to the campaign. Absolutely horrendous. Gone through a couple of managers already. They find themselves in 18th place on 5 points. Now under Sean Dyche. It's a weird game for Manchester United. It's a tricky one. It's away from home. And like I said, it's going to be a different challenge. It's probably a game where United get more of the ball. Probably a game where we're expected to be dominant, where we're expected to take possession, take control. And it's maybe one of those games where it's all about breaking down the opposition and trying to find a way through. The problem is, if we go and look at the Nottingham Forest team, and we look at any Sean Dyche team in history, really, they're going to be difficult to play. They're going to be difficult to play against. They're going to be tough to break down. It's not going to be easy for United. But I'm confident that today, between us, we can come up with a starting 11 that can break down this Forest team, score goals, and keep up the momentum that we've had in recent weeks. Because if you take a quick look at the fixtures this weekend, United have got a serious opportunity to gain some ground. Because good teams are playing each other. You can see Spurs and Chelsea playing each other, Liverpool and Villa playing each other, City and Bournemouth. So should United win, we're going to gain on someone because some good teams will almost, like, they're guaranteed to drop points. Good teams will drop points this weekend. So if United can find a win here, we can get ourselves in a really nice place, potentially in the top 4 by the end of the weekend. Like, that actually feels very, very possible this week. And like I said, Forest are down in 18th. Their start to the season has been horrendous. So this is a game that you would expect United to win. As always, the plan for us today is to find a way of doing that. Is to find a way for United to move through this Forest team. We'll have a quick look at how they play as well. But really the focus, as always, is going to be on Manchester United. Before we do any of that, get in the chat and let me know how you guys are doing, how you're feeling about United, how you're feeling about our chances heading into this game. Of course, we're still playing once a week at the moment. But it almost means that these wins are lasting longer. Sort of the effects of the win are lasting longer. If you were in European football or cup football right now, you might have won 3 games in a row in the league, but you might have lost in midweek, which sort of hits you a little bit. United haven't had that. These wins are almost extending, really, this season. So we feel good. But how do you guys feel about the game? We got a super chat from Adele. Been a horrid time in my personal life, but I miss those streams. Miss you, AJ. Adele, first of all, thank you very much for the super chat. But more importantly, I hope that everything is okay, my friend. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope everything is okay with you and your family and health and everything like that. So I hope you guys are all good. And I have missed you too in these streams. But yes, sending love from myself to you. I hope that everything is okay on your end. Who we got in the chat this morning? We've got loads of people, actually. We have got loads of people straight away, which I'm a little bit surprised by. Because, again, if you did see on YouTube or Discord, we've had a lot of technical difficulties this morning. The stream trying its best not to work. So, I think we're good now and ready to get into this. The Ryan Thomas, good morning to you. Hope you're well. Hope you're well. Money Mace Masterclass incoming, I fear. Well, I think when we get to that top end of the pitch, as always, there's going to be some really interesting conversations. I think when we start deeper, if we start in goal and work our way through, it becomes a little bit simpler. You know, the goalkeeper situation these days is very, 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 very different to the goalkeeper conversations a month ago. Heading towards the last international break, we didn't know who our best goalkeeper was. We didn't know who should be starting. Bayindir was playing a lot. every week we were having this conversation of when does Lomans come into the team? And when he comes into the team, is he going to make it his own spot? Are we going to see goalkeepers rotating? There's none of that. Absolutely none of that. Lomans is our goalkeeper. And I tell you what, he's a pretty darn decent one. He's playing very well. I think he's doing the basics. I don't know that he's done anything incredible just yet. He's not pulled off worldy saves or done anything to absolutely wow me or knock my socks off. But he's just playing well every week. He's doing the basics. He's helping us on the ball. He's helping us off the ball. And that's what I ask for from every single player. To be honest, you couldn't have really asked for a better start for him. Another clean sheet this weekend would be nice. I'd like to see a clean sheet this weekend for him. But I think he's playing very well. And I think that's an easy conversation to have. He comes into the team. The question is, in the back three, who do United go for? Now, we do have Harry Maguire, who's a bit of a contentious one this week because he has had a knock, of course, missed last weekend. So I guess the obvious back three feels like Shaw, De Ligt and Yoro. We know that Lisandro Martinez isn't going to be back just yet. Aidan Heaven perhaps comes into the conversation as well, though, because Luke Shaw did seem to have a bit of a hamstring problem last weekend against Brighton. He played so well and then inevitably picked up a slight knock. So there's maybe a conversation there. Just looking through the rest of the team, Mazraoui perhaps now back up to, fitness and ready to play. So he's someone that we could talk about. Apart from that, looking across the rest of the team, I think those are pretty much our options. So I would, like to hear your thoughts on, would you change that back three? Or is it very simple this week? Do we just keep it the same? By the way, we also had Adele in the chat with 10 gifted memberships. Thank you very, very much, my friend. That is super, super kind of you. I really do appreciate it. Guys, you know what to do. Lots of love hearts in the chat. And we also saw a 2-month membership himself as well, asking what is our record against Sean Dyche? Well, I don't know the answer, but I believe someone else had the answer. 12 wins, 5 draws, 1 loss. So, largely, United have had a pretty good record. I think the last time we played a Sean Dyche side, would that have been our 4-0 win last season at Old Trafford? Would that have been the last time that we played them? And that was a bit of a weird game, to be honest. Of course, it was our biggest win at Old Trafford under Ruben Amorim. I don't actually think we played amazingly well that day, but we sort of got the job done and ended up being quite ruthless. Marcus Rashford actually played in that game, which shows how long ago it was. But yeah, typically we haven't done too badly against Sean Dyche sides. However, I still always expect them to be set up well, because just defensively he's a very, very good manager. But I also always feel that he gives his team a chance on the ball as well. Like, I actually just think he's a good gaffer. So I think it'll be tricky for United. I'd imagine the atmosphere will be good at the stadium. It's going to be a different game for United. Amorim was sort of alluding to that. The pressure is different away from home because you don't have the backing of your own fans. You don't have the fans sort of getting behind you and really helping you in the game in the same way as what you do at home. Having said that, I do think our away fans are the best in England. Personally, I think they're absolutely incredible. So, weird one. I think this is another game, a bit like the Brighton one, where if you can win this one, it's a real statement. Because we spoke the other day about how United have won 3 games in a row, and we've won 3 games in a row doing it differently. Sort of different styles in each game. If we could now go to Forest and have a game where we have, say, 57% of the ball, for example, we're the more dominant team, we have more control of the ball, and still manage to sort of break a team down and win comfortably, that would be a great sign for United. That would be great. That would be 4 wins in a row, doing it in different ways against different types of opposition under different circumstances, which I think would be a really, really good sign. If we win this weekend, I actually start to get excited about where I think we're heading at the moment, which would be good fun. I'd rather see Shaw, but Heaven could step in. I believe Luke Shaw will play if he's fit. And the press conference the other day seemed to suggest that only Maguire was the one likely to be out with a knock. I would be amazed if Luke Shaw doesn't start. We've spoken a lot about the fact that Ruben Amorim seems to want a left-footed player in his back three. That sort of puts it down between Shaw and Heaven at the moment. When Luke Shaw played so well last week and executed a quite difficult tactical plan almost perfectly, I would be amazed if the manager then drops him. He really seems to be one of the ones benefiting from playing once a week. It seems to suit him. He's playing well. I'd be surprised if he's dropped. And honestly, the same on the other side as well. Like, De Ligt will play in the middle. If Maguire is any sort of doubt, De Ligt will play. Again, this is a game where we expect to be dominant on the front foot, which suits De Ligt more than Maguire. Maybe the only debate is here, I would say. But I think for me, even that isn't too much of a debate personally, because I always think you've got to have sort of two physical presences in your back line. And I think if you go Mazraoui, De Ligt, Shaw, you only have one with De Ligt. So I think naturally I would go for Yoro. Unless you're worried about someone like Hudson-Odoi, which makes you want more of a fullback. Perhaps a conversation we can have a little bit later on. I think Dorgu and Mazraoui should start. Are you starting them as wingbacks, or are you starting them as a centre-back and a wingback? Ruben said the same thing in his press conference, that the 4-0 against Everton wasn't representative of the actual match. It was a really weird one. I don't think we played that well against Everton last year, but Xerxes and Rashford were just on fire in that game. I think Ahmad played really well as well, didn't he? So, yeah, I don't think it was a 4-0 win. I think we deserved to win just about, but I don't think we battered them in the way that the scoreline suggested. Amorim schooling Sean Dyche, we will be here for it. I mean, yes, please. Yes, please. Garnacho's bicycle kick was almost 2 years ago. What a weird world we live in, by the way, Snipes. Like, if you told me that day when Garnacho banged in that bicycle kick that sort of within 2 years he'd be out of the club, someone like Cobby would barely be playing, I'd have probably chinned you. Alternatively, we could go Shaw at left wing back, Yoro at left centre back, and Mazraoui at right centre back. I like your thinking, trying to find a different starting 11 rather than the same one every week. Yeah, there is an option for that. I don't know how likely it is, just because I don't know if Shaw's hamstrings can do left wing back shifts. We'll have to find out, I guess. But I actually quite like that as a back three. I think Yoro left side, I've said it a lot, I really think he can play here. I really do. I think he can do a very good job in his position. We know Mazraoui can play there. I think Shaw can play here, technically, and tactically. Physically would be the question. But I think if we're being realistic, it's more likely that he'll play in a back three. Because, you know, if we're unsure about his fitness anyway, to then throw him in at left wing back would feel almost a little bit crazy. So for this week, I expect it to be the same back three. Does anyone really disagree? I'm sticking, no need to change the goalkeeper or back three. Exactly. When they played well last week, they played well against Liverpool. Sorry, Liverpool was a different back three, to be fair. But, you know, generally speaking, the defence has been playing pretty well. Maguire feels like the only change you could make. If he's out with a knock, it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. Steve, good morning, my friend. How are you, mate? Hope you're well. Ruben did say that Shaw would be back after the Brighton game conference. Shaw was unwell due to flu, so he was tired. There was no injury, hopefully. Oh, okay, son. Thank you very much for the update. By the way, guys, I got to say it. If you want to be updated on United, if you want to know literally the ins and outs of this football club, everything that's going on from player fitness to training activity and everything, join our Discord server, right? There's a link in the description. And don't join like for info that I will give you. Join for info that Sun will give you. Most of you guys here are in the Discord already. Sun is absolutely incredible in this community for keeping us all updated. Literally knows like every single detail about this football club, and it's actually so useful. It means that you don't have to go through the torture that is Twitter sometimes, but you still get all the United news. It's actually great. Sun, thank you very much for that update. Who was it that said that Shaw was injured then? Was it? I can't think who it was. It was a good journalist said that he seemed to go off with a knock, but hopefully if it was only the flu, then yeah, he'll be absolutely fine. We got another super chat. My 11 would be Lomans, Yoro, De Ligt, Shaw, Ahmad, Bruno, Casemiro, Dorgu, Cunha, and Bumo, Sesko, I think. See, I think we've got to the point now with United where that 11 that you've put in that super chat, thank you very much, by the way, is sort of like the core 11. You know, we know that probably 7 or 8 of them are going to start. 7 or 8 of those guys are going to play. There's maybe 3 or 4 sort of that are up for debate a little bit, perhaps depending on the opposition or fitness that week and things like that. But generally speaking, it feels like pretty much every week we can predict most of the 11, which I think is a good thing because it shows that consistency, which is good for us. It allows us to build those sort of dynamics between players. It's also a reflection of the fact that we aren't playing European football or we aren't playing in the cups. But I think it's a good thing. I think the best teams in history of English football in particular have had some sort of consistency. You know, they've had a centre-back duo that they go to. They've known who their midfielders are or, you know, who their striker is. Maybe they changed their wingers, for example. But you know what I mean? Largely, they've had an idea and you see it throughout the course of the season. Like Arsenal, over the past couple of years, you know who their defenders are going to be. You know who the midfielders are going to be. And I think that's good for a team to have that. It'll be interesting to see how we deal with that next season. And also, even to be honest, in a month's time in December, when the squad's going to be a bit thinner because of the African Cup of Nations, but also we're going to have more matches. Be really interesting to see how we actually deal with that patch in terms of the squad management. How does our intensity keep up? Does our physicality keep up? It'll be interesting. Sun is a legend. Her research capabilities are legendary. True. Absolute facts. She is a hero in this community. I don't mind it not changing. Yeah, exactly. There's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. What midfield 2 would you get between Anderson, Wharton, Baleba and Stiller? I'd get Anderson and Stiller. Well, one of them happens to be on the pitch here. Elliot Anderson. Someone to watch out for this weekend. If you guys don't sort of follow me on Discord so much, you sort of don't keep up with what I say there, I love this fella. Elliot Anderson is one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. I truly believe that. He has been for a while. It's only been picked up on this season. He's absolutely phenomenal. Potentially can cause a problem in this game. And I guess that sort of leads on quite nicely to what United should do in midfield. Recently, it's been fairly straightforward. It's Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes. Now, one thing we need to figure out is what way round we want to play those two. Do we want Bruno right or left? Or perhaps more advanced? And then, of course, always Ugarte and Kobe sort of float about in the conversation. But I think we all share the same opinion right now that it's very unlikely that they come in. I think Amorim is a manager who sort of, he sees that United won 3 games in a row with that midfield too. Why would he change it? And I sort of get it. Casemiro, another one, certainly benefiting from playing once a week. Probably Bruno as well, to be honest. He's played 5 years of football here where he's played every 3 days at a ridiculous intensity. It's probably doing him some good, his body some good, to have the midweeks off. And it means that when it gets to the weekend, like now, again, it feels like another position which sort of picks itself. There's always the debate for Bruno moving a little bit higher. But when we've got Cunha in form, we've got Mason Mount in form, I don't know that we can even do that. I don't know that we can push Bruno further forward because we're going to be dropping someone seriously good. So is it just as simple as Bruno and Casemiro? I think also we've got to consider what Forest are likely to do. Forest are likely to be in a sort of block. I don't think they will press as high as what other teams have done in recent weeks. I don't think they will squeeze quite as much. I think there'll be a bit more of a 4-4-2 with Gibbs White and Igor Jesus as the front two. And I think they'll be compact. They'll sort of block off passing lanes. Sean Dyche typically likes to try and send teams wide and invite crosses into the box. I'm expecting something similar. I think if you're playing against that sort of side, Bruno makes a lot of sense for his ability to create and be a spark. I guess the question would be, Casemiro, is he the type of midfielder you want for this game? Probably on the ball, yes. But off the ball, when we lose it. When we lose it and Forest look to transition, Casemiro against a Gibbs White or Hudson-Odoi or an Enjoy could be a bit of a problem. Maybe something that you would be worried about. We said the other day, sort of what Forest have done well over the past few seasons is Gibbs White's sort of intensity, his carrying ability on the break, but also Elanga when he was there as well. Now, Elanga isn't there anymore. Ndoye is a very capable replacement. Not quite as athletic, but still a very, very good player. Gibbs White against Casemiro would be a little bit of a concern for me personally, but I don't think it's so much of a concern that you take him out. Does anyone disagree? David, good morning to you, my friend. I hope you're well, mate. Hope you're well. Oh, you can tell David's here. I hadn't scrolled down. David has also gifted a membership. David, thank you very much. Lots of gifted memberships to start this stream. So thank you guys, as always, for the support. Again, if we're talking about legends of the community, David has been here from the very, very beginning, and he's an absolute icon. So David, thank you very much, as always, mate. These couple of games is like a trial for the next midfielder. Last time was Baleba. Tomorrow is Anderson. We've got Palace soon for Wharton. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I guess by that logic, Baleba didn't pass the test last week. Hopefully Anderson doesn't this week. Hopefully Anderson drops an absolute stinker and we completely outplay Forest in the middle of the park. That's what we're hoping for. Casemiro is still good intelligence-wise. When he came off, we were split apart like hot knife and butter. Yeah, exactly. I would be very surprised if after last week, Casemiro doesn't start, because he did play quite well last week. And more importantly, the best case for Casemiro was when he came off the pitch. The fact that we were instantly sort of open, we lacked in intensity, the standards seemed to drop. I think he'll start. I also think he'll start for sort of personality reasons as well. Amorim has been quite keen to point out the fact that this is an away game, that it's a tricky place to go, and it's not the same as Old Trafford. I think he'll be looking for his De Ligts, his Casemiros, his Brunos to sort of lead the team through the opening stages of an away game. I think he'll be looking to those guys. Will one of the back three step into midfield again? It's been much better coordination. Do you think that is a confidence in the keeper effect? I think Amorim has made tweaks. I've seen a lot of people making the point that Amorim was right not to change. He was right to stick with his system because suddenly we've won 3 matches in a row. And I guess logically, yes, he is stuck with the formation. It's still a 3-4-3. Outside of that, I think we've seen a lot of tweaks recently. I think we've seen a lot of tactical changes. The same initial shape, but what we're doing on the pitch is quite different. The way we play out is different. The way we go long is different. The setup in the final third, for example, is quite different. I also think, as you've said there, confidence is huge. Confidence is absolutely massive in football. It's such a huge thing. And when you win a couple of matches, you start to believe in the idea. And for example, Luke Shaw last week, I think if we had played the same match against Brighton a month ago, and was it Rutter in the 10 for Brighton, I think when Shaw had attached to him and then he drifted over here, I think Shaw would have gone halfway and then left him, because he wouldn't have had the confidence in himself, in the system, in the idea, whatever. He'd have passed that man on somewhere else. Last week, after a couple of wins, there's a bit more belief, a bit more aggression perhaps as well. Maybe just more understanding as well, which you sort of gain with time. But last week, we saw him going with him more. Hopefully we see something similar this week. Not necessarily the same tactical idea, but the same commitment and belief in the approach that we are trying to use, if that makes sense. I want to see the players being brave, being bold. I think that was a big thing that they did well last week. They sort of took responsibility for their players, and I think that helped us defensively massively, apart from that sort of 20-minute patch. I think it's more about the fact that we are gassed in the last 20 minutes, considering our style of play. Everyone, especially the front three, are taking a long time to get him back into shape after running so much. Yeah, we ask defensively so much of our players, particularly Cunha and Mbumo last week. They attack as sort of narrow front three players, but then in moments they're out wide. They do a lot of carrying work isolated by themselves to sort of buy us time and relieve pressure. Defensively last week, they were playing as outside midfielders. Yeah, they've got to do a lot of work. Fatigue is definitely a problem for us in the second half of matches. This is one of those ones where we need to be very professional, more professional than what we were last week. Because at least last week, you know, it comes back to 3-2. At least you've still got your crowd behind you. If you do that away from home, if you're 3-0 up and give the opposition 2 goals and go a little bit shaky, the crowd is going to be on top of you, like you wouldn't believe. So United need to be more professional this week in terms of game management. If we were to be in a position where we're winning, we've got to react to that properly and sort of see out the game in the right way. Same as if we concede a goal. If we go 1-0 down, we can't collapse under that and sort of shrink and go 2-0 down. That's when you got to stay strong. I think that will be as important as anything this weekend for this particular United squad. For a top side of a team that's playing really well, I wouldn't say the same. You know, if it was City, for example, or Arsenal right now. You know, if they were to go away to Forest, I would just expect them tactically to have the advantage and win the match. United, we know, are a bit more frail because we've had so many problems over the last year and beyond that as well. So I do think the psychological, the mentality, I think those reactions are as important as what we do tactically. I really, really do. I don't think Ugarte has much of a future at United, but we will probably need him for 30 minutes of games at least this season. Yeah, I think he's a useful player to come out and shut a game down. I think last week it should have been him instead of Kobe on the pitch if you were replacing Casemiro. I think it makes more sense when you're protecting a lead. Like you said, I get the feeling he's not here maybe even next season, to be honest. We've seen at City, Wilcox's idea was sort of, and Berardi, you sort of got 2 years, and if you don't do it in your 2 years, you've had your time, we're going to move you on. I wonder if we might see something similar with Ugarte. He's just out of favour, he can't get in the team. when he plays all right, but doesn't sort of really like make a case that I should absolutely be starting. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one. But as you've said, I think in this sort of away game, again, a tricky one, late on, if we've got a 2-goal lead, for example, I think he's good for 20 minutes to sort of help you out, as long as you get the right players in and around him as well, so you don't lose other things. Can we do a poll? Are we back or no? Are we still on the way? We can do a poll, but I feel like I might get a little bit criticised for doing the poll, because I feel like everyone's going to tell me to calm down if I suggest we are back. I'll give you my answer. I don't think we're back. I think we are some way away from being back, but I think we are on the right track, I guess. Manchester United are a football club that should be winning matches. It's as simple as that. We should win matches. We've done that in the past 3 games. We've got to go do that in the next one, in the next one, in the next one. You know, then we can start. If we play well for a season, we can start talking about being back. But I tell you right now, confidence is back. And I think that's as big as anything. The confidence feels back in the team. There's still a frailty there. I think we saw that last week. The players, when we conceded that first goal last week, even in the stadium, you got that sense of like, please not again. We all got that vibe a little bit. I think that frailty is there. But I think overcoming that and getting the 4th goal late on to wrap up the game is different perhaps to how we would have responded in the past. In the past, I can imagine we would have conceded a 3rd and drawn the game and thrown the game. So I think it's incredibly important that we got that 4th goal last week. Not even that we just saw the game out, but that we had the ability to go and kill it, to literally finish Brighton. I think that's really, really important. Really important. I've been quite critical of Ruben Amorim, but I think one thing he has done well is sort of brought the team together quite nicely. I think the sort of cultural rebuild he's done at the club, I think, has been good. Players that he didn't feel had the intensity, the work rate, perhaps, maybe even the mental toughness at times to get through those moments, he got rid of them. He seems to be building a certain type of squad, a certain type of personality that he wants in the team. And I think we see that in that reaction against Brighton. So I think in that sense, we're moving in the right direction. The mentality, I think, is improving. But of course, still needs a lot of work. There is a very bruised fan base out there. 3 games is a great beginning. Yeah, it's a great beginning, but it is only that. Only a beginning. We've got so much more that we need to do. I definitely don't think we're back. We're going to lose badly at some point soon, and the fan base will once again flip. Yeah, and that's important to point that out. At some point, we'll lose. You know, the winning streak will come to an end at some point. I think it's important that when it happens, we lose in the right way, if you know what I mean. But also that we bounce back from it as well. You know, 1 loss can't turn into 2 or 3. It's got to be a blip, and then we're back to winning ways. I think that's key. I think that's really crucial to United for the rest of this season. You know, if we want to build around Amorim in the long term, if we want him to be our long-term manager, we've got to prove that we can overcome those difficult moments and sort of get back on track and back on top, I think. Anyway, the back 3 and the midfielders and the goalkeeper sort of pick themselves at the moment, don't they? Pretty simple there. Wing-backs, a bit more interesting. Right side, we can have a debate about, or we can have a discussion about what he brings, but we can't have a debate about who plays. It's Ahmad. It's as simple as that. There is no way anyone other than Ahmad starts this game unless there's a horrendous injury issue that we don't know about, or Amorim sort of loses his mind. He's got to play this game. Get him in the team. Get him on the right-hand side. Yes, he's got to do his defensive work, which I think he's done really well recently. He's not a defender, but he gives it a good go. But let's get him on the front foot. Let's get him attacking Forest. That's something that we'll need. If we're looking at a game where we might need to be a little bit patient, where we might need to be a little bit crafty, a little bit creative, have a little bit of spark to break down a stubborn defence, Ahmad at wing-back is the player you go for. The left side's a bit more tricky because we don't have a naturally brilliant attacking option. I think it brings us to the same question that we had last week. What style do you want? We spoke about Dorgu perhaps being a bit more of a space attacker. Someone that, you know, let's say if you draw the team one over one side, ball switched. Dorgu's excellent at attacking that space. He's also quite nice at carrying the ball as well. Dalot can do that, but I think that Dalot's a bit more of a passing player. So I would say from the 2 wing-backs this side, Dorgu's the ball carrier, Dallow's the passer. What goal was it? What goal was it last weekend? There's a goal where Dallow splits the lines with a great pass, and I just don't think Dorgu plays it. I don't think Dorgu plays the ball. Which goal was it? Dallow splits the line, and I just don't think Dorgu would have. I can't speak today. But I think that's why you go with Dallow sometimes, because sometimes you do need the passing ability. Sometimes you need Dorgu for the big spaces and the attacking in that manner. Mazraoui would be a shout as well, yeah. That is a good point to raise, if I can find him. Here he is. Mazraoui is also an option. Now, I have an opinion on this one, but I'm not going to give it just yet. I will firstly wait to hear from you guys and what you think. There is also the conversation of Mount at left wing back, whether or not he could do a job there. We did discuss this briefly on Tuesday, I think it was. It might have been last week. Can Mount play there? Yes. Do I think Mount should play there? No. I don't think it's right for him. Maybe if we're chasing a goal late on, you can do it. I just don't think I would do it from the start. I think it almost is a unnecessary complication in the system. I don't think we need to overcomplicate it in that position when we've done well for the last 3 weeks. I don't think there's a need to make that change, particularly when I don't think he offers us what we want. You know, with Dallow and Dorgu, the criticism is they're not dribblers. Well, Mount isn't necessarily either. So I think it's one of these three down here, personally. I think it's between those guys. Mount will definitely be in a conversation in the front three, though. Yes, we have the black kit because United are confirmed to be playing in the black kit this week. That's why we're in that colour. It's a nice kit as well. I do like it. Yes, Son, the third goal last week. You're right. Dallow and Sesko into Mbumo. I think Sesko does really nicely for that goal, by the way. Like the look over the shoulder and then the spring touch back is really good to give himself the room. But like you said, it comes from Dallow's pass. And it's a pass that I don't think Dorgu plays. So that's why sometimes you go with him. I fear Dorgu's missed passes. It's terrifying. Second Brighton goal, I think. Yeah, he's still a very young player, isn't he, Dorgu? He's still full of mistakes. I said last January when we signed him, what I would have done is signed him and then signed someone in front of him so he could be the backup. Now, we didn't sign someone else, but perhaps it's sort of naturally finding its way. That right now, our wing-back options look like this, perhaps. So Dorgu is still the backup. One way or another, possibly. Tyler Blackett, Steve, what a player. What a throwback. I would start Dallow at left wing-back so that both him and Shaw can cover for Bruno in defensive midfield. Yes, that's a really good point. We saw last week moments where Shaw went and played in midfield defensively, and moments where Dallow went and played midfield on the ball. Now, we didn't do it all the time. He didn't do it all the time. Let's not pretend he spent half an hour there. But on a few occasions, he would rotate inside. We saw Cunha peel to the left, and it allowed a midfielder to bomb further forward. I don't think I would want Dorgu doing that. I don't think I would want him doing that role. I think Dorgu can carry inside. I think he can sort of drive in, but I don't know that he can go plonk himself in midfield and actually play there properly. So maybe that's why you go Dallow. I also think it's worth thinking about, if we're playing against a block, do you naturally sort of prioritise passing over carrying? Especially when we've got, players like Cunha, Mount, and Mbumo, Ahmad, who can carry and unlock. Do you perhaps go for the passing of Dallow rather than the carrying of Dorgu? Or do you go for the fact that Dorgu might naturally hold the width a little bit more because he's left-footed and might play an earlier delivery? They're not necessarily always great at delivering, but let's say, you're facing a low block. It's annoying. They're difficult to break down. It's difficult to find a way through. Dallow's likely to take an extra touch to come back in. Does that slow it down too much? Do you need the quick delivery of the left footer? Something to think about. Should we do a quick poll? We'll do a poll, and I'm not going to include Mazraoui today just because I don't get the feeling he's going to play. I think it's between Dallow and Dorgu at the moment. I think if Mazraoui was to come in, it would be in the back three or for Ahmad, I think, at the moment. I don't think he would overcomplicate it on the right. On the left, sorry. Not currently. Dorgu needs space to be effective in the attack. I don't think he'll be the best option for this match. Yeah, exactly. This doesn't feel like a game where we're going to get loads of space. You expect a stubborn Forest team. So, yeah, maybe Dalot makes more sense. Potentially. Dalot had one of his better games last week. Yeah, I think he did all right. Out of possession, we did great in a 4-4-2. We need to develop that left-hand side understanding and the partnership between Mazraoui and Cunha. Football IQ over physicality, please. Yeah, that is also a reasonable point. With Mazraoui, my concern is I don't think he gets up and down the pitch quite as quickly as what Amorim wants. I think he wants wing-backs that can cover the ground quickly, and I'm not sure that Mazraoui brings that at the moment. Perhaps not. Sorry, I'm hiccuping. I'm like malfunctioning here. 10% chance to win the league. I'll take those odds. I'll take it. I'll keep Dalot on the left wing-back position for now, depending on form. Dalot is currently on the better form. I think that's fair. Ryan says, Dalot is one of my favourite players. Well, you, my friend, need to talk to Steve. Dorgu is good, but I think he needs more development. I think that's fair. We have to accept the lows and the highs. He's unstoppable. Steve is unstoppable. I threatened to ban him. He just keeps punning away. He's unstoppable. What can you do? What can you do, eh? Anyway, what's the poll saying? The poll is saying 56% for Dalot. I will leave it up for around 30 seconds longer or so, and then we will close it. If you do want to have your say between Dalot and Dorgu, open up the chat on YouTube, click the poll thing at the top, and just press it. Quite simple. Quite simple. I don't think Forest will sit deep. They desperately need a win. I shouldn't have read that out. It was in all capital letters. I shouldn't have read that out. I'm not answering it. Principle. Retype it in lowercase, though, and I'll answer the question. Or I'll make the point I want to make. Dalot fan club unite. Need to come together. All right, let's close the poll there. It's close. It's really close. But Dalot has edged ahead slightly. And that might be... All right, Steve, that's enough, mate. You're gone. That might be the first time this season we've seen Dalot win a poll. The poor fella almost never wins a poll, but this week he has. Maybe it's because of the sort of tactical point that I made. Maybe I swayed you. Sorry if I did. Dalot, left side. Ahmad, right side. Feels like a strong team. It feels like the big conversation now in the front line. Cunha. Benjamin Šeško. Xerxes. I'm kidding. Xerxes not going to play. Amorim is not going to start this fella. He finally got a moment to come onto the pitch last week. I feel sorry for him. He's rusty. He's not played a lot of football recently. But he just completely switches off for the set piece. Amorim has probably had him doing bleep tests all week. Šeško up front. Feels very likely. But not guaranteed. And Mbumo. Mason Mounts. Money Mace. It's 3 of the 4. Who? That's the question. Now I'll make it a bit simpler. Brian Mbumo will play. Of course he will. He'll play. He will play. These 3 I don't know. Now Mount obviously got a break last weekend. He didn't play. He had a knock and we didn't need to turn to him. We weren't desperate, so he was able to sit on the bench and have the day off. I would imagine by now he's fine. I would imagine he's now back and ready to play because it didn't seem that serious for him to be on the bench last week. What do you go for here? And for me, I think it's about what's best against a block, which is what I think we're likely to play. Largely. Not all the time, but largely. What's best against a block? Who would be most useful as an impact sub? There's a few things to consider, and I don't know how to approach it, to be honest. Now, if we talk about Forest, sort of for a moment, how they're likely to approach the game, what Sean Dyche sides tend to do is sit in a block where they can. They're not a hyper-aggressive team that go sort of gegenpressing all over the pitch. They're not that sort of side. Sean Dyche teams like to play in a 4-4-2. They like to get numbers behind the ball. They did this against Bournemouth, particularly in the opening stages. They like to keep their distances nice and small, and they sort of go together everywhere on the pitch. They go as their 4-4-2. But goal kicks, and what I often refer to as resets, are moments where they tend to be more aggressive. Again, Sean Dyche sides typically. Not always. He hasn't been at Forest very long, so hasn't had the chance to get all of his ideas across. But what we tend to see from Sean Dyche sides is open play quite deep, resets, goal kicks, more pressing. A bit like Amorim in that sense. When the opposition have the goal kick, United's press is really good. Really good. Open play, it starts to crumble a little bit. So that's potentially something to consider. Let's say, Forest have an early shot, it goes behind the goal, Lomans gets himself a goal kick. It'll be really interesting to see, I say this every week, just on that first goal kick, how Forest approach it. And how we approach it. Do we completely avoid it and just go long? Or do we play the ball deeper? I don't know. Now, if we're looking at the Forest defenders, which I think is a good point, Steve, Milenkovic is a good sort of physical, robust defender. He wants to battle, he wants to grab people, he wants to fight people. Murillo is also quite similar, but he's quite a bit shorter. I want to say Murillo's 5'11". Now, I might be off with that. If I am, correct me. Now, obviously, he's not tiny. He's not tiny. 5'11" isn't small, but for a centre-back, it's relatively little. Especially if we consider that Šeško is about 14 foot tall. I'd consider that. Murillo is a good player. He's a great player. He's aggressive. He covers the ground really well. He's a good channel defender, all of that stuff. But when you've got that height of Šeško, that might be too good to turn down. Because we've seen Šeško going and competing against proper big centre-backs. Like when he came on against Liverpool, against Van Dijk, he looked like he could compete. I'd be very tempted. I'd be very tempted to get him in this position up against Murillo. Because I think what we'll see from United is I think we'll see a long ball game at times. I think we'll see a team that sometimes wants to go long. But I also think there'll be moments where we can play out. Because, there you go, Steve has just confirmed, Murillo is 5'11". Again, that's not tiny, but it is compared to the 16-foot Šeško. Right? When you've got an 18-foot striker, you kind of want to use that against a 5'11" defender. I think, especially when we've got Mbumo over in that sort of region of the pitch as well. Because Mbumo is someone who can also take attention. Sometimes what a team will do, if there's a really, really physical striker, is they'll go really tight on him and drop others around him. So the fullback will sort of cover. So that if the flick on is one, then someone like Nico Williams can cover it. The problem for the other team is we can also go long to Mbumo. So we can use both. We can use either of them for that long target ball. So you almost can't double up on Šeško because we've got other players around that are capable in the air, which is a really good thing for us. Šeško's 19 foot. I read that it was 20. My bad. Yeah. Lots of long ball options up there that we could use. However, at the same time, I think there's a chance to play out as well. Because I think if you're Sean Dyche right now, you've seen United's last 3 games, you've seen a threat. You've seen a threat from United. You've seen that when United are able to go long and play on the second ball, it's a real problem. That United are incredibly dangerous. So if you're Forest and you've gone through a bad spell of form, you're a new manager who's known to be defensively compact, I wonder if you sort of try and set up to deal with the long ball, which involves dropping players a little bit deeper and covering space and competing for seconds. Well, if Forest want to do that, then that's when United can play out from the back. And that's what we were alluding to probably 3 weeks ago now. Maybe less than that. This idea that if United get really good at playing the ball long, it makes playing short a lot easier. It's always been that way in football. We said this under Ten Hag. If United could get good at playing the ball short, teams would press even harder, and then it'd be easier to go long because they'd have less players at the back. So getting good at one thing can make you better at something else. So if United are really good at going long, teams are going to adapt to that. They're going to start going, okay, we need 2 players on Šeško, and we need to outnumber the midfield to have a chance of getting the second ball. Because right now we know that United are the best in the league on the second ball. So teams are going to start adapting according to that. That's when we can get more players here to sort of start outplaying teams. Now, The counter to that, what we need to do, therefore, is also get better at playing the ball out from the back. Because if we can master the long ball and we can master playing short, how do you set up against us? That's why someone like Sesko is so good at the top end of the pitch, but also why technical players in deep areas are so important. If you can do both, what are you, as the opposition, right? How do you approach the game? Because if you force United to play short, they've got the quality to do it. If you force United to play long, they've got the quality to do it. That's the point that we need to get to. We've done the first or the second part now. We're getting better at the long ball. If we could add to that sort of our short game as well, I think we could become somewhat unstoppable on the ball, because it would be so difficult to set up against and prepare for, because we can hurt you in so many different ways. That's sort of where we want to get to. At the moment, the long ball is the much bigger threat. This game is potentially an opportunity to see where the shorter ball could be more useful. Something to look out for. What, that 23-foot Sesko? Always good to have a 27-foot centre forward. That's what I mean. When you've got like a 30-foot striker, why wouldn't you use it? I think you have to play towards it. Sorry, got disconnected. Does long high balls actually work against a solid dice-style low block? I think this is important to discuss now. First of all, thank you very much for the super chat again, my friend. You are on form today. The point that we made while you were disconnected was that Murillo's 5'11". He's really aggressive. You know, he's a bit like Lisandro Martinez in style. Even on the ball, he's an aggressive player, more of a carrier than a passer. But he's quite aggressive with the way that he defends. Got a good leap on him as well, to be fair. I just think physically you've got to be able to use that. And like we said, if we are able to use that, I think particularly at the start of the match, if you go away from home, it almost makes sense to play it safe early on. Send the first three goal kicks long. If we compete well in those first three, get a couple of knockdowns and get ourselves into good positions, then we probably open up the pitch, because Forest probably go, okay, United are dangerous, let's sit in, let's protect. That's when we then build from the back. And then that's when you see a different challenge for United. That's when you see United dominating the ball, and it's that question of breaking the team down. So for me, Mbeumo starts on the right. Sesko starts up front for me personally. I just think that physicality, the extra weapon that gives us, I think is really useful. I also think if you're playing against a stubborn team, having a striker in the box is great, because what you want, a low block can be tough. It can be really tough to get one chance. When you get that one chance, you want your striker to be in there, not still on the edge of the box like a false nine. So I personally tend to prefer a player like Sesko up front if you're playing a defensive team, because I think it's good to have someone who can sniff out a chance, or you might be able to put a ball into the box and you can outjump the centre-backs. So I would start Sesko. So the question for me personally is Cunha or Mount? Cunha or Mount? That is the question for me. Just 11, but one of them is 40 foot tall. Exactly right. Like a 45-foot striker, he can do unstoppable things. Unstoppable things. Yes, this is the question. Cunha or Mount? Cunha or Mount? We're going to do a poll. We'll title it L10, which obviously just means left 10. We'll go Cunha, Mount. And I don't know who you go for. By the way, everyone asking, do we have 12 players? We do, but that's because we're trying to figure out which of the 4 should play in the front 3. So we've got to drop one. I just realised it looked very shiny today. I think I've got the lights in the wrong place. Sells is not having a good start to the season. We need to shoot more. A good point. He's not confident right now. You want someone to shoot more, Cunha's your man, right? He does fire in a lot of shots. Bruno as well. Something to think about. I would say it will all come down to passing midfielders, tearing the lines. I would start Sesko, but not for the long high ball views. Yeah, so I would start Sesko for the fear that he brings on the long ball, and the benefit it then gives us on the short ball. It's sort of my approach to thinking about it. Then I think Bruno and Casemiro make a lot of sense for trying to break lines and trying to play through and trying to create and things like that. Cunha will help us carry the ball, but on a low block, Mount is better with the quick short passes. Yeah, so Ryan, that's sort of the question I want to bring today. Who's better against a low block? I think, I don't know, almost every game state, you can make cases for both of them, which is so great. We did a video on this a few weeks ago. It's a great problem to have when you've got two fantastic left ends who are slightly different. It's a lovely problem to have. It's great. Against big open spaces, transitional teams, Cunha's great. He can carry the ball over 40 yards. He's brilliant. But Mount's also great in those games because of the speed at which he plays. He plays it quick and he knits the move together quite nicely. Against a low block, I would say that Mount is excellent for quick football, runs past the defence, which I think is important against a block to sort of have them second guessing themselves. Cunha, in this sort of game, perhaps doesn't get quite as much room. But what he does do is he has gravity. He brings players towards him, which might make space for someone else. But also he's got game-breaking quality, which I don't think Mount possesses to the same level. Not to quite the same level. I think Cunha is more likely to score out of nothing than what Mount is. Maybe that's harsh on Mount, but that's my personal opinion. I don't know who I would go for out of the two of them. Now, if we're looking at setup, it's fair to assume Ahmad and Mbeumo will play, quite rotational on the right side, so they'll sort of interchange position. One will go wide, the other comes inside, and then vice versa as well. So that's what we expect from the right. If it was me, I would be using a similar thing to last week. In possession, I would be trying to get the wide centre-back high, because I think that will help Casemiro. Because when we lose it, right, if we're in a flat back three, and then a one in midfield, which we do sometimes see, if we do this, I think there's too much room for these guys to carry the ball. And they're all really good carriers. Really good carriers. So I think what I would do is when United are on the ball, try and have the near side centre-back joining. So let's say play does break down here. When Ndoye picks the ball up and tries to carry, he's immediately confronted and can immediately be delayed. Whereas if we're in more of a back three, he's got room to sort of get that bit of momentum and start forcing the United backline back. So I would try and have the ball side centre-back aggressive, positioned high. So let's say we're attacking down the right and Mbeumo's got the ball. Let's get Yoro up with him so that when we lose the ball, Yoro can confront and delay immediately rather than sitting off and letting Forest have space. Particularly when we're playing Casemiro, who can't cover the ground laterally across the pitch in the way that some others could. So I think that's important for the way that we play. How does that sort of affect what we want over here? That's the question. Out of Cunha and Mount, who is likely to combine with Dalot the best, with Bruno the best, with Sesko the best, with Shaw the best? Who's going to be the best impact? I don't know. I mean, right now, Cunha is dominating the poll, and he's going to win the poll. By the way, you will notice once again my chair is slowly sinking. Good news, we should have a sponsor lined up to allow us to solve this problem. So we should be getting a new chair soon. And soon, me slowly sinking will not be as big a theme of the streams. Mount plus Dorgu or Dalot plus Cunha. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And we've gone Dalot, so that would suggest Cunha. I think I would go Cunha. I think what I want from United is a confident start, a fast start, an aggressive start, sort of building on 3 wins in a row. Let's take some momentum into the start of this game. Almost due to Forest, what teams have done to us over the past few years, which is recognise that we're frail and go for us. I would like us to recognise that Forest are struggling right now. We're on form. Let's be aggressive from the start. Let's absolutely get after them. Get Cunha in a 10, get Mbeumo, get Ahmad, Sesko, Bruno, these aggressive players, even Casemiro, to force the game back as quickly as possible, to force Forest deep. And then it will be that question of whether or not we can break them down. That's a very different challenge for this team. I don't think we've seen it too much this season, that challenge. We'll have to see how it goes. That would perhaps be another sign of evolution if we are able to. But it'll be tricky. I think they'll play a low block. I think they will largely, yeah. There'll be moments where they step out naturally, as all teams do, but I think the theme of the match will be a compact Forest team. Maybe a mid-block at times as well. I don't think they'll just collapse to their own penalty area the whole time. Sometimes this backline will be up here somewhere as well, which is something to think about. Mount was effective on the left against Sunderland's low block. Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think I would just go with the more front-footed aggressive player. I think that's what I would do. Front-footed aggressive player from the start. Mount is a great sub to have. Xerxes is a good sub to have as well. Kobbie's a good sub to have. Dorgu's energy can come on. Mazraoui into the back 3 to get him some fitness would make sense. Ugarte possibly for game management purposes if we were to need it. Lack of a killer on the bench, I would say, but that's where we're at with the squad right now. We know we need reinforcements in the future. So I think this is the starting 11 that we are going to go for. And I think it might be the same one that we had in the poll. I can't remember. Anyway, the last thing I want from you is score predictions. Score predictions for this weekend. And I want to hear your score line. You know, what's the score going to be? But also perhaps the order of the goals or who's going to grab them. Who is going to be the one grabbing the goals for United in this game? And if you are a member, you can use emojis on YouTube to predict some of the goal scorers. We don't have all the players because we don't have enough members to have unlocked more, but there's several. There's several. So get your predictions in the chat. And don't worry, I'm not going to predict. Because we all know what happens when I try to predict, so we're not doing that this week. I'm not predicting. I ain't doing it. What do you guys reckon? Also, yes, Short Kings will inherit the F soon. It's only a matter of time. We're coming. United win. Yes, please. 2-0 United win. Cunha with the first, and Mbumo with the second. We have barely mentioned Mbumo today, just because he's an obvious pick. Same with Ahmad. They were fantastic last weekend. Absolutely fantastic. And they're pretty darn good against Liverpool as well. Quality players. 2-0 as they no longer have a Langer. Yes, please. Elliot Anderson audition. Let's hope he fails it horribly. Brings the price right down, then we get him for £3. Happy days. Everyone's a winner. David says 3-1 United with goals from Mbumo, Sesko, Cunha. That's something I loved about last week. The fact that we had our front three all contributing to goals. 4 goal contributions between them in a game where we scored 4 goals. Love it. Absolutely love it. I would like a clean sheet, though, if possible. Sun says 3-0. Goals from Sesko, Mbumo, Bruno Fernandes. Bruno might be due a goal, to be fair. It's been a couple of weeks since he had one. Ahmad Hattrick says Zerg. Yes, please. By the way, I don't know if it's just me because I'm a weird little nerd or something. But I think it looks really cool seeing the player emojis in the chat for the predictions. I don't know why. I just really like it. Steve says 3 goals from United. I assume it's a 3-0 win. Mbumo, 94 seconds in. Please. Bruno with a 44th minute penalty. De Ligt on the 80th minute. I will take that. That's something to think about, actually, today. This weekend, whatever. By the way, what do you make of the different coloured lines at the top? It's a different background to normal. What do you think? Don't know why I mentioned it. What was I going to say? Set pieces. Set pieces are big. We've seen it all season long, to be honest. It's the most set piece goals we've ever seen in terms of percentages in the league. Certainly in the last 6 years. Lots of goals from set pieces, lots of goals from long throws and things like that. That's what you need sometimes when you play this sort of game. When you're struggling for that first goal, being able to turn set pieces to break the deadlock is absolutely huge. That's something that United might be thinking about. Again, Sesko's tall, Cunha's tall, and Mbumo's good in the air. Casemiro, De Ligt, Yoro. Dallow's not small. There's players there that might be able to do something for United in that sense. So set pieces could play a big role here. Callum says a 3-0 dub for United with Sesko, Bruno and Mbumo grabbing the goals. 4-0 United with a front 3 special. Yes, please. United win 3-0. It's a good time to play Forest, in my opinion. Huge change in management, style of play for Forest. Yep, I think that's a good point. Gonna sneeze? No, I'm not. Maguire is key for that, no? Yeah, normally, yes, but he's got a knock this week. I don't think he'd have played anyway. Amorim made a comment sort of between him and De Ligt about how... Sorry, between him and Yoro. How Yoro's better for when we want to try and play a bit more on the front foot. Maguire's a bit better for playing against... when we're playing in a low block a bit more. The player emojis and score predictions is definitely one of the fun parts of the stream. I love using emojis. Right? It just adds to it. It just makes the chat look cooler. I don't know why. It's just a bit of colour in there. Would like to see a red, white and black version or an AJ green, lime and white. Yeah, this green was meant to kind of be the green, but it's just the wrong green in it. Actually, no, I think that might be copied from my logo. I'd actually know. What do you think of Forest in terms of squad strength? Did they kind of overachieve, or does Forest have a very good squad? I think they've got a good team. They are my team of choice for Football Manager this year. I think they've got a good squad. Maybe there's a bias there because I love Elliot Anderson and Gibbs White and Ndoye and Hudson-Odoi. I think they've got some good players. They definitely overachieved last year. And I think all of the underlying data... oh my God. I think all of the underlying data, easy for me to say, sort of suggested that Forest overachieved last year. They were always going to come down a little bit this year, but this year they are underachieving. Yeah, they're a mid-table Premier League side if you ask me. Looking at the squad, I like it. I think they've got a good team there. Good team. We're spoiled for choice in terms of lineups. When did this last happen? Yeah, I mean, next summer we need to add a couple more. You know, an extra midfielder to put into the conversation, an extra wing back, maybe a centre back as well. But it's nice to have these talks where we've actually got a few decisions to make. Callum, every time, you're the biggest hater, I swear. He just drops that emoji every time my voice cracks, and it's quite regular. Lawman's to get his clean sheet. I would like that very much, very much. Just looking ahead to this weekend, what do we think about where United can finish this weekend in terms of the table? You guys are all predicting a win. I would also like to think that we will win. It's not a prediction. I would just like to think that we would. Of course I would. I'm a United fan. Spurs, Chelsea, someone's dropping points there. Liverpool, Villa, someone's dropping points there. City, Bournemouth, someone is dropping points there. So should we win? Should we win? Should we win? I'm so low in the frame now, by the way. You know, there's catchable teams in and around us. There's things that we could do there. Who are Sunderland playing, just out of interest? Everton. That's not an easy game either. That is not an easy game either. Is there a chance that we can sneak top 4? What do we need? We need Bournemouth, Spurs, Sunderland, City. Some of them to lose. Bournemouth against City. Okay, so only one of them can lose. Spurs, would they lose to Chelsea? I don't know. 5th, maybe? The higher United climb in the table, the lower AJ's chair gets. Look how low I am. It's so good. Because I'm 5'6". Actually, I'm 5'7", so I'm kind of lanky. But there is a new chair coming soon, hopefully, so keep an eye out for that on the channel. We should have a sponsor sorted, which is quite nice. Shout out to you guys for making that possible as well. Anyway, we're going to wrap the stream up there because I think we have covered everything that we were supposed to cover. Right, we've picked an 11, we've done the predictions, we've guessed where we think we might finish in the league table. So I think that is our job done for today. So thank you guys very much, as always, for making the build-up to a United game enjoyable. Enjoyable. It's been a good week for United, I would say. It's been a good month in general for United fans. October comes to an end. Hopefully November is going to be as good as what October was in terms of results for United. Hopefully we can win every game next month. That would be absolutely delightful. Hopefully we can climb up the table, and hopefully you guys, who all deserve it, hopefully you guys get more to celebrate. Hopefully. We'll have to wait and see. We don't know. I'm fairly confident that United can get a win this weekend. Again, that's not a prediction. That's a measure of the squads. I'm so short. Look how low down the frame I am. We are going to wrap the stream up there. So thank you very much for everyone getting involved. Thank you to everyone in the chat. Also, thank you to everyone who just sort of sits there quietly. I know you're out there. Thank you to everyone who liked, who subscribed, who got notifications on, who joined the Discord server, who renewed membership, who gifted memberships, who made super chats, and as always, everyone waffling along in the chat about this beautiful club that we all love and hate so much. I wouldn't have it any other way. So shout out you guys. Thank you very much as always. Yeah, that's everything. Thank you for watching, and I will see you. No video today. I'm having the afternoon off. I'm going to touch some grass for a bit. But we'll be back tomorrow, hopefully breaking down how United beat